Welcome to Tips and Tools. I'm Dr. Carlos, behavioral psychologist, and my co-host.
And I'm Dr. G, clinical psychologist. Welcome to our program.
Today we're going to be talking about addiction, but the parenting side. How do the parents feel about this? What do the children feel about it? What's going on? What are some of the dynamics that happen when parents have addiction issues? So, Dr. G.
Yes, sir.
A lot of parents out there, or children, like I was saying, even grandparents, if you want to take it that way.
Or great-grandparents.
Or great-grandparents.
Nowadays we have that, right? Because people are getting
right.
older and, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I want to see all the dynamics that are happening here. So with parents, we'll start off with them.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions I always wondered about is there a difference if one parent has an addiction compared and the other one doesn't? Does that change the dynamic of that relationship?
Yeah, we call that the double whammy.
A double whammy? If one doesn't,
when both have it, it's
a
double whammy. No, but I mean, yes and no. I mean, in terms of, I would say certainly there is a difference because, one of them is more functional and the other one is less functional, technically, right?
Sure.
In general, that's what you can expect. And perhaps also a little bit of more pressure and burden on one partner as it comes to dealing with the other partner's substance abuse and addiction issues. And also perhaps the unavailability of the addicted partner leading to an imbalance in the pressure and, again, burden that the other partner feels in terms of the parenting needs and tasks and chores that are happening on a daily basis. So that imbalance can put not only a personal pressure and time pressure, if you will, for the personal needs of the partner, but also as it relates to taking care of the children and running the chores and even greater responsibilities, financial responsibilities, education, for instance, going to PTA meetings for their children, maybe even planning ahead for their children's education or careers, etc. So a lot more pressure, I would say, both personally as well as it relates to parenting needs.
Last week you mentioned something that was interesting, the complexity of it. So
Yeah.
what I want to do is try to specify a little bit more because it is really different in the sense of if somebody marries an addict who's been an addict before they married them,
Yeah.
compared to somebody who maybe 10 years into the relationship becomes an addict, whether because of painkillers, whatever it is.
True.
So what I'm going to do is let's stay focused on the one for now, on the guy, let's say a gentleman,
Yeah.
just for the sake of it. The man has an injury, he becomes addicted to painkillers.
Sure.
The mom obviously is not.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you have this intriguing dynamic. It wasn't there for 10 years, a decade. They don't know it. The children, say 8 to 12 years old, maybe the standard, the conventional 2 kids, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to have 1.8 like they're showing nowadays, but we'll say 2 kids. How does that work? Because this is a whole new surprise for the wife in this
Sure.
case.
Yes.
It's a shocker for her. My husband has gotten into these issues. He's doing, the behaviors that we talked about. He's lying, whatnot.
Right.
So what happens there?
It can go both ways. I would say maybe in majority of cases, actually there is a little bit more tolerance toward that type of a predicament that the partner is experiencing because there has been a pretty good foundation prior to that, both in the marriage and parenting, parent-child relationship, and the family unit. So the structure of the family, if it was healthy otherwise, and there has been some healthy level and functioning level of a bond and connection already established between the family members where they have enough, let's say, psychological, emotional, and other types of resources available to deal with the new predicament, then this new type of addiction, if you will, or this new phase that is marred by addiction should not necessarily impact the livelihood of the family unit and the functionality of the, let's say, romantic relationship or partner relationship or parent-child relationship as much as, let's say, the other scenario, if it was reversed, the couple would have addiction or would have to deal with addiction from the very beginning of the relationship.
Well, you mean before they got married?
If they got like caught in some kind of addiction cycle before or during or right after when they got married, because there's no history of healthy relationship to go back to, right? So they would have struggled with this whole addiction problem from the get-go.
So somebody who marries somebody who's an addict already, are you looking possibly for the? I know this is kind of generalization, but somebody who maybe is trying to save the addict. You know what I mean? I'll get married.
Yeah.
And maybe if he marries me, things will get better.
Well, that's one of the
That
worst
happens?
things you can do. Absolutely, that can happen. And we would certainly advise against that. A lot of people have that tendency to become saviors. And there's lots of books and theories and modalities that are out there, or models that try to explain that, whether it is, let's say, from a Jungian psychology, a persona that a person develops, like a role that they easily fit into, a savior persona that has existed mythologically or historically in a lot of different cultures or in our collective consciousness. But even from other perspectives, if you think about it, maybe from an empathic perspective, a lot of individuals may feel they have a certain duty, so they kind of confuse empathy and caring with a duty. And then another perspective would be someone who has a history of parentification, meaning someone who has grown up with an addicted parent and therefore kind of gotten used to save people, including their own parents.
That makes sense.
And then end up in a marriage where they may very well willingly, certainly, but also knowingly
Recreate the same thing.
recreated and put up with the addictive predicament of their partners, despite, let's say, evidence to the contrary that they shouldn't. For instance, let's say if the partner is completely uninterested, they're not motivated to get rid of their addiction, or they would rather break up and really not value and appreciate the relationship as much as the non-addictive partner does. So why would you want to spend so much time and effort and really sacrifice yourself to save another person who is not invested in their own saving, right?
That's a great point.
Therefore, kind of going back to the differentiation, when you said, is there a big difference? If the couple, they find themselves in that mindset from the very beginning, that is a dangerous mindset to have. Especially for, another reason, as I would say, once they get over the addiction, then what do they have? The question is,
You mean the savior role?
yes, what happens to the savior role? So if one partner, let's say, they get used to being the savior for 20 years, and finally the addiction is out of the way, and the couple is back to a healthy relationship as far as the addiction is concerned, but they are not in a healthy emotional relationship, because again the savior wants to continue saving this other partner.
So in that case, you would actually advocate getting therapy for both and making sure that both got it. If you saw that, right, in the back of your head, you see, oh, this is a possible savior role here.
Right.
She or he needs to be able to see therapy, so if he does come off, or she comes out of the addiction process,
Yes.
they're both ready to see the relationship, and they still might not find anything in common at that point.
But they will. That's a
will?
little bit difference. I think that type of a therapy, let's say augmented parallel therapy, can be therapy, but also it can be a simple, let's say, modality that we also can label as working on their codependency. So it doesn't necessarily have to exclusively be dealt with in psychotherapy. It could aspects of that savior role, which could be framed under the codependency model, can be addressed in a group meeting, a support group meeting that is designed for family members of addicts. Usually they're called Al-Anon or Nar-Anon and so forth. Anonymous groups for family members. And these are support groups. They have some aspects of therapy to them. Sometimes they are done within a psychotherapeutic model. Sometimes it's more of a psychoeducational model where basically skills are developed or awareness is created for the family members. But certainly, going back to that other question you had, whether or not they will find something in common after many years of, let's say, having revolved all their lives around one issue, which is saving this person from addiction. Well, yes, because the commonality is there throughout the years as they are struggling with other aspects of their lives. You see, while they're kind of struggling with this addictive problem, there are also aspects, there are also human beings who are holistic in nature. Every human being is holistic. They have meaning that we have multiple facets to our functioning. It's not just one thing, right? For instance, let's say two people may at times address the problem of drinking, but then at other times, what are they doing? They're busy solving life's problems, financial issues, education issues, career issues, moving issues, living together, being organized at home, logistical issues. Well, there is the opportunity of the couple to actually connect with each other on different levels. They may very much remember, that they have spent 20 years finding some commonality around some, let's say, artistic work, or maybe literature or music, or again, like they may have commonality in raising their children, which is separate but parallel to the addictive problem. So hopefully, one would hope that over the 20 years, people, and that's just an arbitrary number, it could be 5 years, it could be 40 years, that people develop, kind of work on developing those other aspects of their relationship in separation of the addiction problem, hopefully. If they are high functioning, then they can do that. There are many high functioning, for instance, let's say impaired professionals. Let's think about a little bit impaired professionals. Pilots. There's a professionals who at times, if pilots get addicted, which is dangerous, and they can lose their license and career and everything. One great example is that movie that came out, Flight, with Denzel Washington. That's an example of it. Or firefighters, basically. Policemen, right? They're human beings too. They get addicted too.
Sure.
Soldiers, right? Physicians, dentists, lawyers.
They call them the nursing industry, isn't it?
Nurses, exactly. We know that there are some statistics out there that about 10 to 15% of the professionals in at least United States, if not all over the world, are addicted. They're addicted to painkillers, alcohol, illegal drugs, prescription meds. 10 to 15%.
And the medical health professionals, or just
across the board, even like legal attorneys, judges. Basically legal representatives, police force. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It's all over the place. It is in elderly, it is in young people, it is in professionals and non-professional, let's say unemployed. It doesn't discriminate. So going back to that high functioning level, let's say what if you are a police officer, you're high functioning, or you're a firefighter, or let's say a surgeon, right? You're a high functioning person. You have a family. You are taking care of a lot of stuff. You are well off. You have your finances in place. You have an educated person. You have obligations. You're a good parent, perhaps, most likely, and a good role model for the community, because you must have overcome a lot of obstacles in your life to get to that level, right? As a professional, as someone whom we trust. Think about it. If I go to a surgery room and OR, right, I'm entrusting a surgeon with my life. So they must have gone through a lot of obstacles through life to be accredited as a professional that people trust, right? So they're high functioning people.
Very high. Right? They have an addiction
very high
as well.
Functioning, but they're also addicted at the same time. So addiction hasn't taken them down yet, for good reasons, and part of those, and we can get into that at a later show, because right now we're talking about parents and their struggle. So if you go back to that level, if a couple, whether one or both are professionals, and then they're addicted, they may be very high functioning, and throughout the years, whether the addiction started in the beginning or down the road, because of their high level of functioning, they must have had some common life experiences on a daily basis that has created some kind of a bond and intimacy and closeness and understanding and liking in between them, some desire and attraction and a need for company. And so hopefully that is in place, and then when the addiction is over, then they can kind of go back to the basics of that bond and recultivate this those resources.
So it's safe to say that number one would be getting joint therapy, getting couples therapy in a sense for the parents.
Tip number one would be getting therapy and professional help no matter what, whether it is joint or individual.
But both of them should get.
But certainly, preferably, both of them should get therapy.
Because I know sometimes the person who's not the addict thinks, I don't need to get anything.
That's right.
But they're suffering a lot of different issues going on there.
But the partner can do it.
Yeah. They'll think, it's up to him or her. Mm-hmm. She's the one who's got the problem, doc, not me.
Yeah.
But it's affected them.
That's right. So, I would certainly recommend that both get therapy. And if not therapy, like meaning officially go to a therapist, at least support group. Participate in support groups. This is kind of like, let's say, an opening, a gateway into the world of therapy or health, whether we call it mental health or physical health or spiritual health. For instance, a lot of people may not want to go to therapy or support group, but they reach out to their pastors and rabbis and basically religious leaders in their community because that's what they're comfortable with, right? That's okay. That's no problem. So reach out no matter what. Somehow reach out, help. Even ask coworkers,
don't do it
family
alone.
members. Yeah, just don't rely on your own resources because, again, evidence shows that hasn't worked as much if you're struggling and suffering. If a person realizes, well, I'm suffering, they should realize that they have exhausted, in theory, they have exhausted all their resources to this extent, even if everybody else is at fault.
They may not even be aware of the resources they have.
That's right, and most of it goes back to their lack of awareness. People do have resources, but there are sometimes obstacles to access those resources. Right? For instance, let's say self-esteem. Someone may have a lot of self-esteem, but they just are not accessing it, or self-confidence, or let's say ability to trust others. That's a huge issue by itself. You see, the ability to trust the world and other human beings, that can be taken in two different ways. It can be taken as a strength, and if someone can access that strength, they can almost overcome almost anything in life, because then they start building everything else on top of that core sense of confidence. You see, with trust comes confidence. Mm-hmm. If I deep down I believe I can trust human beings, and that's not a blind trust, by the way. It is an experienced trust. It's a trust based on wisdom, based on experience, based on trial and error, based on
past associations, relationships,
or having more empirically. It's an empirical thing. We have gone through a lot of obstacles, ups and downs around trust, but we haven't given up on it.
Gotcha.
If that's the case, then that is a foundation for confidence. If I can trust the world, if I can trust myself, if I can trust you, then I'm going to be confident around you, around the world, around myself, around other people.
Does that also entail perspective a little bit?
For instance?
For instance, you said people who go through challenges and overcome them, sometimes people are like, oh my God, everything I do is wrong. Yes. I constantly have these negative things happening to me. But another person will look at it and say, look, I have all these negative things, but I continue coming out of it.
Right.
Does also perspective also have a play in this, or not much?
You can call it perspective. I would say certainly it has, and I would call it worldview, but yes, it definitely has to do a lot with how the how people go with the experiences that they have or the events that happen to them, right? And they can reframe the situation. Like they say, the world is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with what happens to you, right?
That's right.
That would be going back to that worldview and perspective. But, that's an example of a resource that a person has, and you're right along, with that kind of philosophy that I'm proposing, which is we can look at perspective as a resource, right? That positive perspective. If I look at, yes, I have obstacles, but I'm overcoming them all the time. Wow. Brave me. That's fantastic. Give me another one, right? That's a perspective. So that could be a resource, or like I mentioned, trust, or it could be taken negatively as a weakness, and then it becomes an impediment rather than a resource. So to give you an example, if somebody says, well, I can't trust anybody anymore because I have done that enough and I have been fooled and I have been cheated and betrayed upon that, so that's why I gave up on trust. So trust is a bad thing. I'm not going to trust people. Now that becomes a weakness. That becomes an obstacle, an impediment for you to actually live on a daily basis. So you lose your confidence with it too. Same thing with perspective. If a person says, well, you know what? If I take a positive perspective, I'm fooling myself. The world is full of, charlatans. And if I just look at things like, yeah, I can do it, that's this distorted viewpoint, and I don't want to do that. I want to be realistic. And if I'm realistic, everything is sad, everything is broken, people are liars, and this and that. That's debilitating.
Yeah, and if you define it as being realistic, it's really debilitating.
That's debilitating. Now you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Right? So it goes back to that, is awareness. Are we aware? And in therapy, you can become aware. In therapy, you can use someone else's perspective, which is hopefully the therapist in the room, to pull you out of that conundrum, if you will. So you're no longer lost in your own world and thoughts and fantasies and emotions and basically your own experience that may be negative, right? Again, if it is negative, it's debilitating, so you need someone to pull you out of it, right? Unless you can do it by yourself.
Okay, so we got tip number 1, which is getting therapy.
Yeah.
Or a support group.
Yes.
Once again, it's going to be a common tip, just to give you an idea. One thought here, just for a second, I was going to say, some minor segue, maybe 30 seconds. The savior concept is interesting from the persona in regards to Jungians. It reminds me of the presidential candidates right now, the presidential elections.
Yes.
People are looking for their savior, in a sense. Help me get out of this. Yeah. We're in a terrible situation, economy, Right. And they kind of perceive those people as that. I know it's not the same thing, but similar. It seems like it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the case with elections and looking for even within a small organization. People look at, let's say, the boss of the company, the CEO, more or less as a savior. Like you can save everything. You can save us. You can fix everything, as if it is all done by like a decree. If whoever just puts down a decree, boom, it's going to be done. As if there is nothing else after that decree. No, there's going to be lots of obstacles and problems, differences of opinions. People are going to be involved. Logistics are different. So then what? Nobody looks at that. Then what? Let's say, okay, we bring in someone who says, no, I don't agree with anything that's going on here, so I'm going to save you. Okay, but then what are you going to do, actually? Then what? Let's say you're elected. And then what are you going to do? You're not going to work with people? You got to work with people, and then when you work with people, you have the same problems from scratch. Now you have to resolve differences of opinions and discussions and things like that.
And the reason I bring it up is, I guess, wasn't a complete segue, is because we view these candidates in a parental way.
Yeah.
And my association comes back to the family again.
Right.
The children view, let's say, their father. I'll just use the father for example here. The father, they looked for him for guidance.
Yes.
They look for them for protection, just like the mother.
True.
So if that is not being provided because the addiction is getting in the way,
right,
that's a problem.
It's a huge problem. Also, I would go further and propose that it's not only the lack of provision, but also providing wrong information. A parent who is addicted Whether they know it or not, they are rationalizing, they are compartmentalizing, they are they have distorted views. They are basically rationalizing their own erroneous behaviors. And again, they don't have to be aware of it, have bad intentions to engage in that type of a distortion, but that's what they're doing on a daily basis in order to hide their addictive behaviors, behavioral problems that they have, right?
Interesting.
For instance, excessive use of substances, excessive expenditure on those substances or activities. Again, unavailability, unreliability. If someone who is addicted, they're not reliable. That's bottom line. And we can detect it, we can see it, people around them see it. They make all kinds of promises that they cannot keep. So then, if you think about it, now in a role of a father or mother, they would exude, convey these models, the role modeling. They are sending the wrong messages, that there is something wrong and I choose not to pay attention to it. That's the parent who is addicted. That's the message the parent inadvertently is sending to their children. Sure. I can distort reality, and let me show you how. This is how to do it. That's the nonverbal teaching. A parent who is engaged in that type of addictive behavior, by the words that they use, sentences, thoughts, ideas, again, actions, and emotional interactions such as emotional outbursts or even lack of emotions. Some people choose not to show emotions when showing emotion would be appropriate.
Well, right? Even can't because the drugs have...
Or even can't because they're completely numbed.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about it, they are really remiss at providing the right type of parenting to their children.
It's interesting. So another psychological view. We're playing a couple of mind games here with you guys today. But another one is psychological protecting. What I mean by that is that, let's once again, poor father here, but the father's got the addiction issue, and the mother now has to get and say she doesn't have an addiction issue. She's got to get in the role of protecting her children, not only physically, if he has a violent temper or anything, but also the psychological role of protecting the children against emotional issues. If the father either has a temper, doesn't have a temper, and that's kind of a drain for her because she has to be there because they may, Daddy couldn't help me with school today for whatever reason.
Yes.
Or he's not coming home on time.
That's
or why didn't Daddy go to work today? Why is he sitting in bed? And these are things that the parent, the healthier one, is going to have to try to maneuver around.
Absolutely.
But that seems to be very taxing.
It is taxing, and I think I would like to add to it. First of all, we are gender neutral, so it could happen the reverse. And I have had clients basically where the father is very functional and the mother is kind of dysfunctional and doesn't care about the children, and it's mostly in the throes of her addiction. So we are gender neutral. It's not about which gender does it more or less. But with going with this example, it is very taxing emotionally, absolutely financially as well, I would say. And again, in all aspects of daily functioning, on let's say the mother who has to physically, like you said, protect the children, emotionally protect the children, and again, parenting. Like she is more or less becoming a double agent, if you will. One, the agency is being the mother, and the other agency is being the father. Kind of fulfill the deficient role of the father figure. Fill in that gap. And on top of that, what you mentioned, these extraneous things that happen, but they happen on a daily basis, such as, again, rationalizing the addicted partner's behavior to the children. Because the children are, that's the thing. Children have almost like this natural, innate tendency for healthy functioning.
Sure.
They do. You could also say it's almost like a kind of a stem cell, or stem mass of abilities that can go either way. We can teach children to become villains, or we can teach children to become angels, kind of in an extreme version, because they're willing to learn. They have the ability to learn. So if they're put in an environment where there's so much dysfunction going on around them, the first thing they do, they start questioning. And you see that with every child. Children, as one of the innate abilities of children is to question things.
Yes.
Right?
I know that.
Why is this like that? Why do you do that? Why is dad doing this? Why are you doing that? Why do I have to do this? There's always that curiosity that is pre-programmed with every child. And that's more or less their guiding principle, if you think about it. And something that people miss out a lot, whether it is with children or, kind of infants, toddlers, or kind of preteens or teenagers, especially with teenagers, we forget that they have a lot of questions, and we have a great opportunity to tap into that ability, that curiosity that people have, especially at a young age, to connect with them. We, in fact, a lot of times it's even very sad that I have to say that we do the opposite. Like, we shut them down when they're asking questions. We get upset and frustrated by their questions instead of welcoming them.
Because I said so.
Because I said so. Don't ask more questions. This is what it is. Just do what I say, and so forth, right? And even worse. So, but going back to the parent who has to cover for the other partner because the child is curious enough to examine the environment, think about the kind of almost like misleading parenting that she has to engage in. Right?
Sure.
She has to tell the child a lie about their father.
Daddy's
She
tired
has to
today or something.
tired today. She has to distort reality for them. Right? And guess what that leads to? That's like a learning principle. We are teaching the child that you should look at the world in a distorted fashion. What you see is not real. There's something behind it that you don't understand, and you shouldn't understand because I'm not telling you.
That's right.
Right? Think about that kind of a false reality that we are delivering to our children in order to protect something. What are we protecting? The homeostasis. We are protecting the falling apart of the family. Because if we came through with the reality, the family would fall apart. Right? What if I tell the child, well, your dad is drunk, he's a loser.
Hi, welcome to Adalante. This is Adalante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adalante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Well, there are some people that do that. I've seen that on shows like cop shows, and you'll see them he's just a loser because he's an alcoholic.
Right.
What does that do?
Well, that's not good either. You see?
We got two extremes then.
We have two
Rationalize
extremes.
it, just tell it like it is.
Well, it's more than telling it like it is. If we told like it is, we would say, well, your dad is struggling with something.
Excellent point. That's right.
And he's not well. It's like any other type. Like remember when you get a flu, you're not well. And he's sick, he's ill, and he's struggling with that. But he's going to get better. It's as simple as that. So we're not distorting reality. Yes, you're a great child and a smart child for having detected something that's out of order. I'm validating that. And you're a great person and I'm there with you, and I support that learning process that you're going through. And at the same time, you don't have to despair. You see, if I'm saying he's a loser, Now they're going to start to despair. Oh, wow, I have a daddy who's a loser. What does that mean about me? What does it say about me?
Sure.
Right? If my dad is a loser, as you know, children want to be like their dad and their mom.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to be a loser too. So we stop that. Yeah. We don't tell them, no, he's a loser just because I perceive him as a loser. That's my perception that he's a loser. Right?
I shouldn't call anybody a loser anyway, but yes.
Some people, they are. But, right, so we don't want to jump. Well, as part of the parenting process, we don't want to do that. So we want to at least shield the children from these negative judgments.
That's tip 2.
That's tip 3, I think.
You're
behind right there.
What's tip 2?
Tip 2.
I got tip 1 is going to therapy. Tip 3
Tip 2 was like calling it what it is.
Okay,
but in a realistic fashion.
Okay, so that's tip 2. So we'll get back to tip 3 in a minute. Then calling it like it is in a realistic fashion.
And tip 3 is not to basically teach children to have a negativistic judgment, right, about things that they see, and not to jump to conclusions immediately based on one's perception. So examine. So we want to teach them to, well, there's something going on, validating, but you need more information. I need more information. We all need more information. So, okay, let's take our time, go to the doctor, go to the professional, get more information. Then we can make a judgment.
And it's also important, you think, to give them that hope, like you mentioned earlier, that dad is going to get better or mama is going to get better. Is it necessary to add that qualifier in there? You think?
I think it is, especially with children. We don't necessarily want to predict negative outcome unless it's absolutely necessary. Because you see, part of our psychological makeup and one of the core elements of any human being to develop self-esteem, confidence, and energy and motivation to continue in life is hope. You don't want to take that away. If anyone would be a proponent of that, they would really have to apply it across the world for every human being, which would mean the disaster, because basically that would end the whole species. Because if we say, well, there's no hope, in 1,000,000 years or so, the earth is going to be consumed by the sun. So let's just all of us give up. What's the meaning of that? We don't want to give up hope. Same thing with the child. We don't want to tell the child, well, your dad is addicted or struggling with an illness and is not going to get better. Why are we predicting that? How do I know if they are getting better or not? Now, you may ask, well, how do I know if they are getting better? Why should I instill hope? Well, instilling hope is, if you will, as part of the, again, parenting process. Necessary. That's a necessary component of teaching children to hang on to that ability. Because hope is an ability. Okay? We're teaching the children, tap into that resource of hopefulness. Hang on to that ability of being hopeful, despite seeming setbacks, failures, disappointments. Right? That's it. That's why a parent should do it. Now, should we do that, let's say, in terms of adults? Well, depends. Like, let's say, how about if the father of a spouse is struggling with addiction? Would the spouse have to kind of sugarcoat that, right? And say, well, honey, don't worry, he's going to get better. Well, it depends. If the spouse is in need of hopefulness, again, as part of their psychological makeup, and that's what would help them continue, because otherwise they're suicidal, otherwise they're hopeless, they're severely depressed and things like that, that may be a good thing, right? Maybe a good thing. But it may be a bad thing if it is done without examination, without a thorough examination of the situation. Because then, what if I tell my spouse, let's say, oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, so they're not prepared. And in fact, they always start hoping in or believing in something that may not be true and hanging on to that as a sure outcome, and then they are disappointed, right? Down the road, say, well, you told me everything is going to be okay, right? Now it's not okay, and what am I going to do with that? So we don't want to necessarily immediately jump to a conclusion in terms of which way to go, instilling hope or not instilling hope, with a partner, with an adult. We have to examine that situation. But what would be realistic and helpful, right? Certainly, we don't want to be doomsayers, like predict the worst, because we want to just kind of inoculate our partner to the worst thing happening. Well, who would do that? Who would tell their partner, yeah, well, there's no hope for it. You're that. Just get used to it. Nobody would want to do that. Nobody should do that, unless they're kind of mean and,
There's some tough times in their past that justified it for them, I guess.
Or have a resentment or something like that. They want to get back at their partner.
Let me take it back a little bit to, you mentioned this comment, parentification.
Yes.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about that in the minutes we have left. We got still quite a bit of time, but parentification, I want to see if you can define that a little bit. And what would you do with somebody like that? Let's say they're 25, 30 years old.
Yeah.
And, I'll ask the other questions, I guess, when I get there. So what is parentification?
Okay. So parentification basically is a process in which a child takes on the role of a parent for the purposes of taking care of that parent, because the parent has been debilitated or incapacitated to whatever extent, whether it is due to a disability or substance use or alcohol use or addiction or other types of, or maybe financial burden, financial problems. So whenever a parent is incapacitated and they're not fulfilling their own functions as a parent, or even self-care for themselves, then the child may jump into action of taking care of the parent, as if the child is the parent, as if the child has the duty to parent the father or the mother, right? And that process is parentification. Now, when some children go through this process of parentification, they tend to, and usually that happens early in their childhood, when they are, as soon as they can remember, more or less. It can happen as early as 5 or 6 years old, and I've had clients who were at that age when they were parentified, and or it can happen later on, maybe in their teenage years or then older adult years. But at any given moment, this can set into action. Now, when it does, what happens is, especially if it is in early developmental stages of a child, where their mind has not developed yet, because they haven't had enough time to actually live life as a child, and live life fully as, let's say, a teenager. So they haven't had enough experience around actually developing kind of completely going through those developmental stages personally. What happens then, they are confused. Ultimately, they grow up with this sense of duty and responsibility that becomes part of their identity, right? So later on, let's say after about 18, 19, 20, going forward, they may always feel this desire, this innate drive to take care of others, to be there for others. And that is in excess of like a normal taking care, normal being there for others. More or less, they don't know any boundaries anymore. They're going to be there for a possible partner, for a possible co-worker.
And the reason I bring it up is there's two sides of the coin. You brought the one side where the child gets parentified. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a tree that gets ossified, but you get a child that gets parentified.
Yeah.
And that happens, I think it's common with addict parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then what happens a lot of times, that child grows up,
mm-hmm.
and then becomes almost like an enabler.
Yes.
In a sense, if they meet somebody who's an addict,
right.
and they continue the role we talked about earlier.
Right.
So what I was trying to do is look at the two different sides and the different actors in the play.
Yeah.
Because you have the parents who are addicts, and the child, and over here you have an adult who's an addict, and then you have the adult who's parentified. who's enabled.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the that role, that dynamic. Because there's probably some people out there
Yeah.
who are probably wondering, okay, my significant other is an addict. Am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing here?
Good.
So how would we define the good and the bad in regards to a person who might be enabling the addict
Yeah.
in a way that's not helpful?
That's a very good question. So I think, and it is a very complex phenomenon. So if that is happening to some of our viewers and they are wondering, how do I know if I'm parentified child, if I'm an enabler, if I'm basically an excessive savior, if you will, and trying to save my partner from the inevitable or from actual reality, some real world duties and responsibilities that they should get to know, and I'm kind of parenting them too much to a point of preventing them from learning the realities of life, then there is some, I would say, first of all, some inclination that you may have. For instance, that you're doing too much. You know, you have done a lot and there's not enough. You still feel like you have to do more. Or you're being told that you have to do more. You know, if you're getting that type of inclination, that inkling, that sensation, that, you're kind of burning out. It's draining. It's not normal. It's not balanced. It is out of whack, more or less. It's out of balance. Then that's a good start. That's a good place to examine things. Am I doing my all I can do as a spouse? For instance, let's say if you are a husband or a boyfriend, you can say, well, what would generally mostly boyfriends or husbands do? And you can ask advice, you can ask a professional, you can go ask family and friends. But one problem with family and friends is that they're quite biased. If they like you, right? Either way, they're biased. If they don't like you, they're going to be biased. If they like you, they're biased. So perhaps a professional, again, goes back to a counselor, a therapist.
Tip number one.
Going back to tip number one. And kind of seek some advice. Maybe I'm doing too much. I don't know. Can I get your advice to see if I'm a good husband? I'm a good boyfriend. I believe I'm doing my duties. I'm going, responsibilities. I'm providing as much as I can, and so forth. But is that enough, or should I do more? Should I do less? I'm not sure, because either internally I'm telling myself I got to do more, and that's not enough. Or I'm being told by the other partner that what I'm doing is not enough. So I think the key point is not being enough.
Not being enough.
Not being enough.
How
and
about
you got
the
to do
moral
more.
compass?
Uh-huh.
In other words, the person starts, like we said earlier with the children,
Yeah.
the person starts rationalizing for their significant other. In this case, we'll say they don't have children, but they maybe call in for work. Oh, he's really sick today. Or they start doing things that challenges their moral compass. They're doing things that they don't know. They know it's not right.
Right.
But they continue to go through it. They've either rationalized it now because it's happened so long and
Sure.
they don't want to give it the role. Is that something to watch out for?
I'm not sure if that has, would be linked to the parentification. But yes, in terms of enabling, I would agree. So if you are doing something that is that goes against your moral compass, yes, then I would suggest you want to again re-examine, am I breaking my own moral code? And the answer would be very clear, because internally, if you are, you are breaking your moral code, right? So if the answer is yes, then even if you don't express it verbally, you can internally say, yes, I am, right? To yourself. And then based on that, you can then examine, well, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because of my partner? Am I doing this because I don't want him or her to feel a pain of having to do what they are supposed to do? Of perhaps, kind of fulfilling their responsibility in one fashion or another. For instance, let's say if the partner is not sick, right? And they are calling in sick. There we go. They're not sick. They're calling in sick. There's a little bit of a gray area here, right?
Sure.
So why is my partner calling in sick if they're not sick? And if I know that behind this is that issue of addiction, then, and me not speaking up or me supporting them to call sick, then I'm enabling them in their process of maintaining that addiction at the expense of being unethical.
And in that situation, would tip 2 come in, where we talked about calling it as it is in an accurate way? Remember that, when we talked about that, where we told the child that your father's struggling, he's got like a disease or something. Would that work the same for we'll just say a relationship between a girl and a man here, and they're having that conversation? She sees him calling in sick when he's not.
Right.
Does it behoove her to use tip 2? To tell him, I saw that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You may be sick, but not the way you're claiming to be sick.
Right.
Is it possible, or is that a wrong
Between
idea?
them or between them and the child?
No, just no children, just the 2
the
adults
parents.
here. We'll say the couple.
Between
We'll
the
say there's no
couple.
children, just a couple.
No, I would say yes, absolutely. The partner needs to speak up. Now, generally, actually, there's usually no problem with that. Most partners do speak up. The problem occurs after they speak up with an addicted partner who is in denial or not ready to change. Some partners are not in denial, but they're not ready to change. And that can become problematic because usually due to limited emotional and other types of resources that the addict has, they may really become uncharacteristically and at times characteristically violent. Right? So when there is then, you see violence coming on. Now violence is like a spectrum. It can start from cussing and fussing and just being upset and frustrated and belligerent to all the way hitting somebody, right, or killing someone. Like it can be extremes, right? There's a spectrum, but generally any of that type of I would say belligerence, right? Is more or less a sign of an act of violence. So, and that becomes scary. That's the action or reaction of the addicted partner that shuts down the feedback system, right? When one partner is giving feedback and say, well, you weren't really sick and you called in sick, don't you see that you kind of overdoing, and that's because you had a hangover and you're not going in. Don't you see how your drinking is affecting your job now? That's feedback. That's good feedback. That's great feedback. That's constructive feedback, right? That's realistic feedback that could and should, in a healthy relationship, help this debilitated partner to raise awareness, wake up, that something is going on, that I need to pay attention, and I need to seek help, right? But what usually happens is that this addicted person, for a variety of reasons, would end up discounting this good feedback, reframing it as negative feedback, as criticism, as perhaps another version of belligerence, right? They may get offended and say, who are you to tell me what to do or not to do? So you are rude, you are disrespectful, which we call projection, right? So at that time, then this destructive reaction from the addictive partner becomes a source of, kind of demotivation or disappointment for the first partner who was courageous enough to give feedback in the first place. And that becomes almost like a punishment, right? It feels like a punishment. Well, I'm just sharing with you what I observe, but if you're not happy about it, if you're getting back, in my face in a belligerent fashion, you're being disrespectful, you're being, rude, and you're being even violent to some extent, then I'm going to be scared to give you feedback, right?
Absolutely.
And what happens is that it is at that juncture that a person switches from giving verbal, observational feedback to non-verbal, and at times also verbal, strategies. So rather than an honest, straightforward feedback, the way they see things, they may stop doing that and then shift into a strategy to maintain some sensibility, some reasonability, some balance in the relationship so things don't escalate into greater violence, or what most people are afraid of in sense of abandonment.
That's another issue for
Right.
another day. Yes.
Or divorce, or breakage, if you will, right? A breakup in the relationship.
That's another great issue we'll have to talk about when we have another show.
Fantastic.
Let's recap the 4 tips we have. First tip was to get help.
Get help, whatever fashion you can.
Whatever fashion you can. That's right. Therapists, support groups, whatever it may be. Tip 2, telling the truth.
Yeah.
But in a good way.
Yes.
You don't want to use pejorative comments. He's a loser, this and that, but you want to tell him this guy has a disease, that your father has a disease he's trying to overcome.
A problem. He has. If you don't want to even use the word disease or illness, use the word, but he has a problem. He's working through that, and we are here for them.
Tip 3 was not to teach the children a negative view of life.
Right.
That things can get, and that's tip 4, the kind of overlap. Tip 4 was things are getting better, to give them hope.
Yes.
For the children especially, right?
Right.
For the adults, you said to be, make sure to think about it, to see if the situation, how realistic it really is.
Right.
Okay. And then tip 5 was look out for the parentification factor.
Yes.
If you've had parents that were addicts, look out to see if you may have that kind of quality, and if you're enabling somebody, if you are in a relationship with somebody who is an addict.
And I like the 2 components that you added to that tip 5, which, well, first of all, the one I added was not feeling good enough.
Not feeling good enough, exactly.
Not feeling drained and burnt out. If that's the case, and if you internally are telling yourself, or externally your partner is telling you that what you're doing is not good enough, then you may want to examine that type of maybe inner parentification that's going on. And the second one, that's what you added, was a moral compass. If you are kind of stepping over certain boundaries, moral, ethical boundaries, then you can also examine, maybe I'm enabling my partner in their addictive style, and I should seek help and advice to figure out whether I am or not.
Fantastic stuff, fantastic stuff. Hopefully you learned as much as I did. This is great stuff to help you if you know anybody who's suffering from addiction, if it isn't yourself, somebody you love. Where do we go, Dr. G?
I would recommend Elite Care Treatment Center, and you can find them at elitecaretreatment.com, and also you can call them at 888-511-0607. Should be displayed on the screen, 888-511-0607. And other good treatment centers. A lot of our sponsors of this show are some treatment centers, and you can certainly contact them. We would certainly love to see people healthy and happy and overcome these issues, whether it is between parent and child or couples, and it is possible. I mean, that's one thing I would, as a tips and last tip, if you will, tip number 6 is don't lose hope. Hang on, hang in there, seek help. That's what you put one step in front of the other, knowing that help is available, solutions are available.
Thanks again for joining us on Tips and Tools, Dr. G and Dr. Carlos.